Hello everybody, welcome to another review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the brand new album by the BLACKGAZE band Ghost Bath with Rose, Thorn, Necklace. So, Ghost Bath are back with a new album 4 years after their previous Self-Loafer, and as someone who only knows Ghost Bath through recommendations of my friend who actually is quite a big fan, especially of Moon Lover, this is an interesting first album for someone who hasn't listened to them but heard good things. I can definitely tell that there is some reminiscent factors that do kind of take part to some of the earlier material. Something like Moon Lover, I can imagine still being somewhat here and present, but Rose Thorn Necklace seems to be very interesting. I'm going to use words that my friend described when telling me about the album before I went to listen to it, that the second half just sounds like Enter Shikari, and at least it plays with elements that make it feel like a BLACKGAZE Enter Shikari, and honestly I can hear that, because this album, strangely enough, dabbles more into electronic techno area, especially starting with Vodka Butterfly, which I feel like if you go into that point of the album you're wondering what's going on. It feels like a huge shift in its narrative, and then you also get tracks like Stamina and Pistol and Throat Cancer, which kind of bring in more of the electronic-y side into the sound. It still feels like Ghost Bath, but it's incorporating this kind of interesting sound for the second half. Something that I feel like they wanted to ease you in with their traditional sound and then just kind of pull the punches with the more experimental on the second side. Which is weird. A lot of the songs as well don't really go for a long length. The longest song is 5 minutes, and this is interesting because the band used to have on average a song that was like 6 to 9 minutes, like on the good old Moon Lover album. But Self-Loafer was kind of the trend to shorten the songs, and I guess they just stuck with it. But as a band, it incorporates BLACKGAZE up there with Deafheaven, Alcest, and Infant Island. The consistency of the genre is still very high. I haven't really found anything to kind of suck within the genre. Even if it's a band being experimental, I've enjoyed every release from bands like this. And if you want to put Infinite Granite on its own scale, well, it's done by a BLACKGAZE band. It's not a BLACKGAZE album, so I don't think the genre really has anything that ruins it. If anything, there's a lot of bands that manage to experiment, so you're not getting the same experience again. Deafheaven is guilty of this with Lonely People in Power, which still is my favourite album of the year, and I really don't see it being topped with just how perfect it is. But I think Ghost Bath is just kind of going the sort of easier way when it comes to this. As someone who hasn't really listened to Ghost Bath and had to take what my friends had to say about it, it's interesting that the techno side is kind of the big change in factor for them. Putting more of this progressive electronic stuff reminds me of Dance Gavin Dance and in Shikari rather than just ES on its own, but it's still interesting to say the least. It definitely doesn't wager any of the sound or lose what the band's been building up here, but rather just kind of expands upon a possibility that I don't think anyone really wondered. I don't think any person necessarily thought, do you want to be interesting if Ghost Bath just decided just to incorporate a lot of electronic elements, just slap synths into it. It just isn't really something you think of BLACKGAZE, and I guess that's kind of where the intrigued factor comes from. You don't imagine it, so then it just surprises you when you hear it, and I think that's what Ghost Bath do well here. But other than that, I think it's just a pretty good record. It's not anything I would say is personally that incredible. I feel Ghost Bath have a stronger line of material early in their career as they've sort of built their legacy up from it, even despite being a small niche band. But I can't say that the quality to this point is terrible. I still think the output of what they've had still feels like them from what I've heard, and I still think it's enjoyable, even if you're a diehard Ghost Bar fan and still confused by what we have here. It's just kind of hard to speak since I haven't really listened to much of this band, but it's certainly an interesting take and experience. I can imagine this probably being the weakest album from the band, and I still think a lot of fans would like it, so it's kind of a well-grounded album in that regard. But it's interesting to see a BLACKGAZE album that's just over 30 minutes. I thought that was a myth. I'm used to the 10-minute songs like Deafheaven and Alcest do, so quite surprised by this one. But yep, that's all I have to say. I'm going to give this one a 3.5 out of 5. It's a fun album, got some good moments, and yeah, just that's pretty much it. It's certainly an interesting album, and yeah, so I hope you'll enjoy. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.